Mash is an anime about a strong magicless man beating up people who have magic. He does it with absurd tactics, brute strength, and all the while boasting a great cast of main characters and even side characters. So if you like what I just said, get ready for a Mashle review to see if you want to watch this amazing anime. First off, the world Mashle takes place in is basically of the Death Eaters from Harry Potter 1. Everyone in the world has magic, and if someone is born without it or loses their magic, they are persecuted and killed just for existing. And of course, there's this dumb notion that the world is built with magic, so creatures without it are scorns on the earth, which is a very villainous perspective, but the populace as a whole has those thoughts. So Mash, the MC who is magicless, is at a major disadvantage when it comes to society and magic. At first, his goal is to hide his magiclessness from society as a whole, but come the end of season 1 and beginning of season 2, the secret gets out, and he's fighting for his life. But he's like super OP despite not having magic, so it really doesn't matter at all. He just straight up bodies anyone that comes after him, especially after he figures out what to do against them. For example, Thornhead over here has fought Mash before, and yeah, Mash did struggle at first, but then eventually beat him. But then when they get into a fight for the second time, Mash completely trounces him, not even breaking a sweat. And then he says one of the coldest lines there is.
でも一度見たからな、それも2回同じのはちょっと。
But not only that, he's able to perform feats of magic despite not having magic, just purely using his muscle and pure power to destroy any challenge that may come his way. Like just burying this dude he's not allowed to fight, using the strength of his legs and kicking the air to fly Sanji style, or using a stick to create a vortex of fire around him to light a candle. Bro is just built different figuratively and literally, and he destroys any magic user that dares to challenge the might of his muscles. So all I'm saying is muscle is better than magic. Maybe if Harry Potter just had a six-pack, he could have beat up Voldemort. All I'm saying. But yeah, Mash is kinda just super overpowered. And this leads us to a plague that affects many fantasy isekai, OP protagonist syndrome. But like any quality anime burdened with this disease, Mashle of course has its own way to overcome the blandness this syndrome incurs. So how does Mashle do this? Well, actually by doing two things at once. And the first one I'll talk about is how, not if. Instead of caring about if he wins the fights, because we already know he is from the plot armor to being OP, it's not really a question. But instead it's how he wins the fights. Like a fight against Thornhead earlier. He wins by just straight up running on his projectiles till he sucks him in the face. Or this masochist dude who, when he injures himself, the damage gets placed on the enemy and he heals. Mash got super creative by, turning a steel wand into a tennis racket, then playing one-man tennis against the head of the masochist stand until it broke, allowing masochist man to actually take damage the whole time Mash was enduring his own overpowered attacks. Yeah, that's just something. And a good something, don't get me wrong. Who in their right mind would ever think that that was something that could be done? But that's where the how comes into play. We, the audience, see the challenges placed in front of Mash at the same time he sees it. So we try to think of a way that Mash could possibly beat the enemy that stands before him, only to get our ideas completely thrown out of the water by Mash's own completely absurd yet genius ideas. And he's able to do all of that with just his muscles, which is pretty crazy because magic is really strong. And though Mash can backhand a fireball away, when strong people come his way, it's not that easy anymore. And when you only have your own strength to fight with, you're kind of at a disadvantage. So in a way, Mash isn't even an OP protagonist because in the face of overwhelming magic power, what can he really do but take it head on? All that being said, he can fly from kicking really fast, so take what he just said with a grain of salt. And yeah, that's the first thing this anime does to combat OP protagonist syndrome, which we can see in other anime as well. If we take a look at Cautious Hero, it does quite a similar thing, where in Cautious Hero, the excitement from the fights comes from how absurdly prepared and cautious he is. We know he's gonna win the fight because he's overly cautious and prepared, but seeing the extent to which he is prepared is a completely different story. And I think Mashle takes an idea just like this and makes it so good. For the second thing Mashle does to combat OP protag syndrome, it has great characters and character dynamics. Comparing to another show, here's One Punch Man. The whole show is about him one-shotting everything, yet it's amazing. One, due to the animation, but also because of its comedy and characters. None of the fights are really that entertaining because he just, one punches them all, but it's how the characters interact and the comedy that comes from that, which makes One Punch Man so good. and Mashle has that in spades because each one of the characters is absurd in their own way. As we've talked about before, Mash is OP and super creative, but despite his actual genius level ideas of how to use his muscles to beat magic users, he's really just a meathead that isn't that smart. But that's where a lot of his charm comes from. He wears his heart on his sleeve because he can't hide any of his reactions he has to anything and just acts how he wants. Whenever he needs to use his mind, he breaks because he can't take in too much information at once, and he just loves cream puffs too much. Next is Lance, or Siscon guy. He's Siscon. He joins MASH because his sister is losing magic and he loves her, so he wants a world where magic isn't required for her. Despite this actually very wholesome and awesome reason for joining him, it's still very heavy-handed with the whole Siscon thing, and that's honestly his main personality trait. He is also the second strongest in the crew, only surpassed by MASH, and like his planet-themed gravity magic, he's also a rock that could be relied on. Next is Dot, or Boom Guy. He wants girls and thinks being with Mash will bring him girls. He's dumb like Mash and has a hot head, thus his spiky red hair and explosion magic. Not too much has been shown for his character thus far, but he's really the only one in the group that has a really loud and explosive personality. Next is Lemon, whose whole personality is that she loves Mash, like she's overly in love with him, so yeah, that's all we really get from her. And she's never really used in fights, so she's mainly placed in a friend group so she could be Mash's love interest. This to the point that I really couldn't even think of a random name to give her except for just girl, which is just sad. But yeah, that's Lemon. Finally, you got, I'd say, the most basic of the group, and if anything, the one who's a self-insert because of the blandness. Finn, or Bland Guy. Though he is the only one in the group with a mind actually being rational when it comes to anything, he's an idiot in a different way. He's the so-called weakest, but he's got an OP ability with freaking Boogie Woogie from JJK. Like, you all saw how OP Aoi Toto was, and they have the same ability. Yet he's super weak. Is there a lore reason for this, or is he stupid? I mean, the one fight where we got to see his magic on display, he didn't even make full use of it. It's such a shame. But yeah, with all these characters, Mashle is able to push even further beyond its OP protagonist syndrome to be even better. And it's not only its main crew that's crazy, but also most of the side characters that Mash fights have entire complexes and stories of their own depicting why they're as crazy as they are, so it really makes you love this anime. And honestly, this is just an amazing anime. You get to see crazy fights with absurd tactics and pretty good characters to boot. And I didn't even begin to cover the entire plot, which just makes this anime even better. But I'm out of time, so I can't. I really do hope you enjoyed watching this video though. So, I'm Anali, and a bye-bye.